Hi, Trimley Station Public Meeting Agenda 26th of June was convened by our new MP, Jenny, and it was extraordinarily well attended, etc, etc, etc. The key folks was a representative from East Suffolk District Council, the East Suffolk Lines Community Rail Partnership were the folks who actually did the initial survey of the immediate folk around the station. And that really, I think, led to a greater engagement by lots of people. We had Greater Anglia, who came and presented their case. They are effectively the existing landlord of the site, if you like, leasing it from Network Rail. And then really two very, very important folk from the point of view of hopefully future funding, but a lot of knowledge, was the Railway Heritage Trust and the Save Britain's Heritage. So have a look at this. The mood in the room certainly improved greatly with the presentation of the last two speakers. But in addition, there was a very significant gent who travelled all the way up from Hampshire to give us the advice of his experience with bringing back into use a number of railway stations in Hampshire. And I think he gave us an awful lot more confidence than we'd had previously. So have a look-see at this. I apologise for the quality of the video. I used it on my mobile phone and I was sitting back in a very crowded room. So Bernard's done the best he can with it. Have a look and be informed. Bye for now. Bye.
Figure in Trimley Station. So what are we doing? Well, the building has been advertised for rental since 2023, but with the curb appeal, it's quite obvious why we have many people coming forward. We have a comprehensive station strategy, including assessments of conditions at stations, potential uses. We've shared a lot of information with stakeholders, and this meeting really brings that all to the fore. To refurbish and preserve the building. And I should stress that doesn't include fitting out inside any utilities or facilities. That is the fabric of the building. Now, obviously, moving forward, a top-up contribution from Greater Anglia might be possible. Heritage, we can all come together in that respect. But we do need a number of locally driven initiatives, I feel, to get to that sort of total. It's not an insignificant sum. Put a breakdown there. I'm not a builder, but I know that those prices have increased because everything has gone up, as we know, in the last 2 years. And we're now up to 1.25 million on the updated figures. And unfortunately, we're at the moment not funded for these sorts of projects in the rail industry. And at the moment, that's Greater Anglia, and that goes for Network Rail as well. At the end of our national rail contract, so used to saying franchise, at the end of our national rail contract, which is on the 12th of October, we have the obligation to hand the building back in the same or better state than it was handed to us. And the surveys were carried out back then, and now reveal that, as we say, it's very much the same as it was handed over to us. So if we go on to the next slide, I just wanted to give an example of why I feel quite passionate that if we can come together, we can do a good job. So here's an example of Attleborough Station, which was restored in Norfolk on the Norwich to Cambridge line in 2019, working with the Railway Heritage Fund. The frustration for me is that despite the money that we've all plugged in and spent, the building remains unused. And we've really struggled to get a tenant in because it's an old building. They're difficult to work in. They've not got your modern connections. They've not got the environmental friendliness that we look for in big buildings. We did have a vet in there at one point, but they left, and we needed to undertake substantial amounts of repairs to the roof to keep it watertight. Now, you know, we've improved the building, we've taken out UPVC windows, we've put in wooden sash windows, we're taking it back to its original state. That burden of ongoing maintenance now rests with us, because there's nobody in there to do it. So that is completely coming out of our station refurbishment fund. We've restored the car park at Attleborough as well. You know, it's not an insignificant figure, £900,000 for car parking spaces. It was £300,000 on the station building. These are big figures that we're talking about here, and it upsets me that the building is still empty, despite it being heavily marketed and on a very busy line between Norwich and Cambridge. If we move on, you can see here, that's the front of the station, the platforms have then been done, the windows, the surrounds of the windows. We spent a lot of time and effort, and the upkeep now is quite a burden to our team. Just move on. So, the size of the problem, I think we've all seen from the photos, is not insignificant at Trimley. But if we come together, I think there is a solution. But I need to make it quite clear that we haven't got the funds to do that at the moment. We are very keen to get to a decision before October the 12th. Because we will be nationalised basically then. We don't know what budgets will be set in the new world. Everything will be subject to freedom of information. There will be an awful lot of scrutiny. So that's why I really encourage you now, if you want to do something positive with this building, we need to get the plans in place, because it will be a very, very different operating environment for us after the 12th of October. So, I think that's it from me. At that note, I'll hand over to Tim.
Okay, I'm Tim Headley-Jones. I'm the Director of the Railway Heritage Trust. So in very simple terms, we give grants to help restore historic railway stations and structures. And that's mainly those in listed or in conservation areas, but we do make some exceptions. We're 40 years old this year. We've given more than £70 million in grants to more than 2,000 projects of the like which, like Andrew said, Attleborough, but all over the country. And that £70 million of grants has helped to bring in £94 million of third-party investment. So one of the benefits of how we work is that our grants can help to draw out other funding. So what I want to do now really is just to sort of show you what sort of projects we do and how they can transform places. Obviously, Andrew's given you the lowdown in terms of the situation in Trimley itself, and Robert's given you the historical background. And so, you know, in a way, this sort of comes together in terms of answering this question of why we do it. And there are basically three reasons why the Railway Heritage Trust supports projects to restore railway buildings. And the first one is significance. Significance in terms of the importance of railway stations and structures to the histories of the communities and why it's important to them. And you know, Talia, in terms of the survey, came out with some of that stuff around you know, people's lives and the journeys and the places that are important to them. So significance important. Social value, and again that sort of goes back to, well, what could you use this space for? And I'll come on to a few examples. The picture there is Birkdale in Lancashire. They've turned their station house into a community library because the local library is shut. So, you know, what is of value to the community? What do you want to see happen to it? Is the question that is really important to answer. And then thirdly, sustainability. If we agree we're in a climate crisis, then we can't forget about the embedded carbon in historic buildings. And by demolishing buildings, we tend to lose that. So there is an environmental and sustainability argument around historic buildings, whether they're listed or not. This is Levenshulme South Manchester. Before restoration, boarded up, old supermarket, looks awful. This is what it looks like now. Beautiful. Transformed into a cafe and community hub. There's a disused railway underneath that's used as a cycleway. really popular, and inside it looks like that. And that's now starting to help regenerate the rest of the community. There are other things happening. So really positive inner city project. Shawford in Hampshire before restoration. Again, this is not a bit like Trimley, so it's not a great welcome to Shawford. But what the Community Rail Partnership has helped do down there is to turn this into a community cafe. And it's particularly good. Gary can vouch for it with ice cream. So you want to go to get ice cream, you go to Shawford. Gelato, indeed. So they've even made it to gelato down at Shawford. That's the interior, beautiful Victorian roof there that's been restored with our help in terms of grants. Not just buildings, structures. So Castlefield Viaduct in Manchester. This has been disused since 1969. Nobody knew what to do with it. This is what the National Trust have done with it. An urban park. It's now open to the public. All sorts of liabilities go with a structure like that. All very difficult. So easy to say no. Can't be done. But the will was there with Andy Burnham, the National Trust, senior people, to say no, this is important in terms of tackling some of the inner city issues around moving across Manchester, between Salford and Manchester. This is what has been created, and it's now going to become a full open park. So really brilliant project. Trimley's not listed. Bricket Wood wasn't listed, but we said we would help Bricket Wood. Similarly to Trimley, it looks lost. Why on earth wasn't that demolished? Well, it wasn't demolished because people there said, we don't want that to happen. And this is what Bricket Wood now looks like. It's an exemplar of a London North Western Railway country station, and it's been restored as a cafe that operates on a not-for-profit basis, so any profits are fed back into the community. The cafe has a roller shutter, comes down, so in the evening anyone in the community can hire it, and the benefit of doing a project like this is that in this case West Midlands Trains, which is a train company, got very much on board and helped with, let's say, some of the signage. They repainted the canopy, so good begets better. Although Andrew's obviously done all the work on the footbridge and the platform already, so there we go. But this is what can be achieved. This was on the first day of it opening. It's been totally, restored inside, and they've got beautiful old black and white photographs, maps, the history of the station. It gives social value. It gives the significance of Bricket Wood as a place, and environmentally, they've saved a building from demolition. Similarly, Henley and Arden, again, this is Warwickshire, not listed, again, all boarded up, and not much future. Community took it on. This lady, Angela, on the left-hand side, she was walking her dog through the car park. She said, I'm sick of seeing people taking drugs and dropping litter. I don't want this to happen to my station. On the left-hand side is her signing the lease for the building, and on the right-hand side is what it looked like on that day. So, it's not a great day when you sign a lease and think, Christ, what have I taken on? But the reality is that this is what you can create. This is Angela on the opening day with your Peter Hendy cutting the ribbon. And inside, that's what it looks like. It's a community pub. It had a brewery at the end. That brewery is actually, it wasn't viable. They've had to close down. So that's the reality of buildings, is that the businesses come and go, new uses have to be found. So Henley and Arden, great example. And that's what it looks like on the outside now. Windows are back. It's a welcoming place. There are people there. The antisocial behaviour has disappeared. The litter is gone. And it's a much nicer place to be. So there we go. Final thoughts. I think many of these things have come out in terms of what people have talked about already, but a clear vision, is exactly what is needed here at Trimley in terms of the future. Teamwork and good project governance is critical. It does need to be well managed. Multiple funding sources. As Andrew said, the rail industry can't just sort of create a magic money tree, but at Hollingbourne, which is where the picture on the right comes from, they funded their project out of 15 different funding sources. And everyone came together, Kent County Council, ourselves, Community Rail Network, South Eastern Train Company, Sustrans, and local businesses came together. And someone like Trimley, you've got every container train in the country going past. And what about tapping up the managing directors of Freightliner and GB Rail Freight to help with some of this funding? So, as I say, draw on all your stakeholders. There's lots of goodwill out there. And there's lots of people who've done similar projects, as I've tried to illustrate very, very rapidly here, who can give help and advice. And, it will be hard, frustrating, difficult and stressful, but as all those projects that I've just shown have achieved, it's worth it. So there we go.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to our wonderful speakers. Really appreciate everyone taking the time to be here this evening and to discuss the future of the Trimley station. I want to very briefly tell you this evening about who SAVE are, and also why we think that Trimley station absolutely deserves to be given a second chance. So I'm going to talk a little more generally about at the national scale of what historic buildings do and why they're so important. We're standing in a fantastic historic building today. They're often robust, functional, and absolutely important parts of our lives. So SAVE is a charity that campaigns to bring new life to threatened historic buildings. And through our actions, we raise awareness of the potential of losing historic buildings that stand at the heart of our communities and the overwhelming sustainability benefits of upgrading and adapting them rather than demolishing them and completely erasing their history. At SAVE, we're a very small team, but we try to work with architects, planners, community groups to have a much wider impact. And this is actually our 50th year. So this is half a century of fighting for historic buildings and against their needless demolition. We fight for buildings of all types: schools, terrace houses, cinemas, railway stations. And actually for almost all of the 50 years that we have existed, we've been fighting for railway heritage. This started with SAVE's president with an exhibition report called Off the Rails. Topic has really been something that we've been talking about for centuries. It outlined the present day challenges to reusing railway stations, but crucially, there are opportunities for reuse, and that's a small publication, but it goes through hundreds of them. We continued then to fight for railway station buildings into the present day. A few of them might be familiar to you this evening. We campaigned in 2021 to 2023 to save these two fantastic station buildings, which were threatened with demolition. They're still standing today, and we have some fantastic groups which are working to bring them back into use. So railway stations, they're a really important part of the UK's heritage. They tell the story of the country's industrial growth and expansion, economic growth, but they're also portals to our communities, and they help connect us across the country. Very, very quickly, I think Trimley has some really interesting connection across England, which we've already heard something tonight from Robert. So this early 1890s building was designed, as Robert mentioned, by William Ashby. He was a prominent railway architect, and he's notable for the designs of stations on the Great Eastern Railway. This includes Norwich Station, station which I really enjoyed visiting today, Felixstowe Station, and Liverpool Street Station. This is a historic image that's quite different today. So Trimley is really important. It's an important part of Ashby's work and the new Essex style. So we know why this building is architecturally important. We know why it's historically important. But why save historic buildings? And why might we want them brought with us into our future? So this is really at the heart of SAVE's work. Our heritage and historic buildings connect us more deeply with our towns and our cities. They help foster a sense of community, and they boost our local economies and bring a sense of pride in where we live. So according to Historic England, the government advises on heritage bolsters local economies. They can act as a catalyst for attracting businesses and investors and give them a competitive edge. Historic places are unique, therefore more exciting, more trendy, and more exciting. So historic buildings can make us aware of our surroundings, help us understand where we come from, but as a result, they help us create new identities and a sense of belonging to that place, bringing these buildings and spaces back into our future. It's just a quick picture down to you from a really tour of that. So Safe's work has done this all over the UK. It is absolutely impossible to save historic buildings and extremely beneficial. So very quickly, just a few examples. This is the Water Streets in Liverpool. Safe successfully challenged the demolition of 400 homes in
Yes, it did.
which were originally built for Trimley and industrial workers, probably most famous for being that place, Ringo Starr. So Safe led a really fierce, community-driven campaign to save the streets, and we won a public inquiry in 2014. This saved the buildings. It paved the way for Manchester-based developer Place First to come in and refurbish and regenerate buildings. Hugely different approach to demolition, but we are so thankful that they did it, because what we have is a really fresh and great and vibrant neighbourhood that was almost completely erased. And equally, Wentworth Woodhouse in South Yorkshire. So this is showing opposite end of the scale, showing a huge building that was in Yorkshire State. This was, it's a Great One's stately home. It's the largest private house in Britain. But bringing it back to life, it's benefited more than just the building. So this is how it was to save, kind of started the company to save it. And this is it now, which is fantastic. But I think really importantly, it's been a huge boost for its local community. There are so many events that go on here. There's outdoor cinemas, car boot sales, flower shows, historic tours, quiz nights. And it's really lively and active place in its locality. It's a boost for employment. It's a boost for tourism. So it's a historic space that continues to serve its community. So in 50 years of campaigning, we have seen buildings of all types, conditions, all levels of deterioration brought back into use. So we would really like to support any group that is willing to take on the challenge at Trimley Station. And that's what we'd like to hear from you all tonight, what you would like to see in the future of this building. Just a few things to know. I think we have a sign-up sheet, potentially, that will be circulated shortly. Thank you very much. And I also have a link in the back and taking some pictures, so anyone grab up the event, just flag me down. That's all for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.